Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Using AI to Design, Build, and Govern Enterprise Integrations. I'm your host, Dominic Wellington. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Data and AI at SnapLogic, and I will be joined in a moment by my colleague Roger Swankowski, a Senior Solutions Engineer at SnapLogic, who will be running the demonstration today. Let's just go through a few housekeeping announcements before we dive in. Please do break the ice, use the chat to tell us your name and where you're joining us from today. Once you've done that, do drop your questions in the Q&A tab throughout the webinar. We have colleagues standing by who will do their best to answer the questions live. And if we don't manage to get all the questions, we will send you a wrap-up email afterwards with all of the answers and pointers to further information. There is already some information in the Docs tab, so you can check those out to get you started with SnapGPT if you see anything interesting that you'd like to get your hands on right away. And no need to hurry to take notes or screenshots or anything like that. You will get a full recording afterwards, so you get the whole video and talk track and demo, as well as those external docs. But with that, let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can work faster and smarter by using SnapGPT. We're going to start with a quick historical detour. How did we get here with SnapLogic and the generative AI? And then we're going to talk specifically about the difference between day one and day two tasks and why that's important, especially if you're a power user of SnapLogic, wondering how much help something like SnapGPT can really be to you in your day-to-day life. Then Roger is going to show some example scenarios of those day two use cases using SnapGPT. And then we'll wrap up with some suggested next steps around SnapLogic and the generative AI. So first of all, it's worth taking a step back and remembering that all of this is really new. It's been barely 3 years since OpenAI launched ChatGPT and kickstarted this latest wave of interest in AI and generative AI specifically. So with that November launch, everyone suddenly got very excited about AI all over again, and maybe a little bit too excited, and some of them had to be brought back down to earth. This is not artificial general intelligence. It is not a human mind in a box or anything like that. But the key point is that once that initial dazzling had faded a little bit, people realized that this is really useful, even if it isn't a mind in a box or what have you. And that is what we set out to build with SnapGPT, something that could be useful to SnapLogic users to build, analyze, and describe their pipelines, helping them be more efficient and effective in their work. We have a few examples of integration tasks that it will help with so that it can be integrated seamlessly into your daily productivity with SnapLogic. So things like analyzing pipelines, getting help with the SnapLogic product itself, generating regular expressions, and so on and so forth. We're going to see all of those and more in the demonstration later. And the reason we were able to do this is that SnapLogic has been working with artificial intelligence since long before the current wave of interest. It was back in 2017 that we launched our own first AI capabilities under the banner of Iris. And to give you an idea of how different the landscape was at the time, we called it machine learning rather than AI, because AI was somewhat uncool at the time. But then we proceeded to add auto-link capabilities, making it easier to map information between different source and target systems. And because we therefore had the team in-house working on these AI capabilities, we were able to hit the ground running in March 2023, so barely 4 months in to the Gen AI boom. We were ready with SnapGPT. And a triumph of marketing was in 7 letters. It tells you exactly what it does. It creates pipelines, it generates expressions and scripts, it helps you generate documentation, SQL queries, and even sample data for your projects. But we didn't stop there. We continued to evolve it in 2024. So SnapGPT gained the capability to analyze pipelines, to do multi-expression generation. It became aware of parameters in the pipelines. It acquired conversational memory, so you could have more useful exchanges with it, and retrieval augmented generation, so that you could provide it examples of pipelines for it to use. And then in 2025, we added source citation to reassure people who are worried, what if this thing hallucinates and gives me a bad answer? You can see exactly where that answer came from. It also became aware of what is on the canvas already, so that it's, again, more of a collaboration type of experience. And imaged pipeline capabilities, which is really, really handy if you've been working with some colleagues and you've sketched out exactly what the logical flow should be. You can now skip the step of laboriously recreating your graphic in the SnapLogic canvas, because you can ingest that graphic directly and at least mock up a template of the pipeline based on your notes from your conversation with your colleagues, as well as adding more of a reasoning model to improve the quality of the output of SnapGPT. And this has been really, really successful with our users. So here are a couple of examples of some early adopters of SnapGPT, and they are reporting being able to generate integration workflows in under an hour that would otherwise have taken days. So this is taking the existing promise of SnapLogic's low-code, no-code model and taking it one step further, making what was already easy and already quick, making it quicker and easier, while maintaining the accuracy and the power of the underlying SnapLogic platform. And this fits in with the way people are adopting AI capabilities already. We at SnapLogic ran a survey towards the end of last year, and we found that 78% of workers are already using AI in their role. 50% are even already using AI agents. So this survey may be somewhat biased towards a population of SnapLogic users who are perhaps early adopters of these sorts of capabilities, but they are seeing results already. They're reporting interacting with AI basically every day of the week and saving over 3 hours on work-related tasks by doing that. And we're seeing the transition from the early days of experimentation, poking at the tool to figure out what it could do, to actual day-to-day usefulness. The most used SnapGPT prompt in 2025 was describe the pipeline. And so that, to us, is a sign of users increasingly relying on natural language to get information and interpret complex integration patterns that they are faced with. And that is a key sign of the transition from day one tasks to day two tasks, which is where the real value is and the journey that we would like to take you on today. So when we talk about day one tasks, these are the sorts of tasks that you might have on day one of sitting down in front of SnapLogic and not really knowing what it is and what you're doing. So you might ask it questions like, how do I even make a pipeline? And so SnapGPT will go off and refer to the docs and give you some answers about that. Then you might have more specific questions. How do I connect to this particular system that I have to talk to? What credentials am I going to need? What parameters will I need to supply to get the right information back? And so armed with that, then you might have a question such as, okay, make me a pipeline that will read data from one system, format it, and output it to another system. But these are all relatively simple tasks. The nature of things is that if you do these a few times, you will, learn how to do them, and you won't need the assistance with these basic capabilities. Day two tasks, on the other hand, are more the sorts of things that even once you know how to use the platform, you might still find useful in taking care of basic work, things that you're not interested or that would be time consuming for you to do yourself, even if you're perfectly capable. So let's say a colleague goes on holiday, and while they're away, you have to work on one of their pipelines. And of course, there are no docs because there are never any docs. So rather than having to figure it out from first principles, what if you could get AI assistants to do that, to give you an understanding of what your colleague built? Or maybe there's a pipeline that's running, it's doing its job, but there's some performance issues. And again, you could laboriously go through the whole thing by hand and troubleshoot everything. but maybe there's something obvious that you can quickly figure out with AI assistance and save yourself a whole bunch of time. Or perhaps you have all of the basic logic of the pipeline worked out, but at some points you need to interact with some system, some database. So you need a regular expression, you need a complex SQL query, and it's getting just a little bit beyond your comfort zone with those languages. And again, maybe you could get some assistance, something to help you do that. That's the sort of thing that does come up pretty regularly in the work of an integration developer. So Roger, why don't you show us what that would look like in the actual SnapLogic interface?
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Dominic. Let me go ahead and pull up my... Perfect. All right. So thank you, Dominic, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Roger Shrimkowski. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at SnapLogic. Today, I'll show you how SnapGPT accelerates the work of integration developers every day, such as writing expressions, understanding pipelines, catching errors, and documenting for compliance, right? So those things. So let's start with something every integration developer knows, which is data cleanup. Okay, and I'm building this transaction pipeline. I've jumped into the mapper. This pipeline is for a financial services client, and I need to standardize merchant names. You can see I left myself a to-do, and I need to trim white space. I need to convert it to uppercase, collapse multiple spaces, and handle nulls gracefully, right? So that's quite a bit to do in one go. So what I'm going to actually do is use SnapGPT with some natural language. I'm just going to open this prompt so you can see the whole thing, and that way it doesn't disappear when I run it here for you. So inside of my mapper, I'm going to click this flower icon. I'm going to paste the prompt, and I'm going to send that away. So again, without SnapGPT here to help, right, I'd be flipping between documentation tabs, testing regex patterns in my mind, maybe another site, right? Debugging a ternary expression. It's easy to get wrong. It's difficult to troubleshoot. So here, SnapGPT has already given me an answer. I'm just going to let it sit there for a second so everybody can see it. Then we go ahead and select it. I can highlight it again, right? But we're able to do that with plain English in a matter of seconds. So that's the conditional that we talked about, null handling regex, and method chaining, right? So let's go to the next thing, which is actually the expression just below. So this is sort of the reverse of what we just did. So now let's say that we're a junior developer, a new person to the team, something along those lines. And we need to understand this pipeline, and we're struggling with this expression because as you look at it, you can see there's a lot of regex in it. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this expression, and we are going to come into SnapGPT on the right-hand side, and we're going to say, explain this expression in SnapLogic. We're going to paste that expression, right? So without SnapGPT, again, I'm sitting there, I'm deep step by step, I'm testing it, maybe in my head, maybe on another site, running a validator, right? And instead, I just ask SnapGPT. So here is the breakdown. If I scroll down here, and it's still generating. So there we go. It kicks me to the bottom. So if I come back to the top, right, we can see that it's telling us what data it's referencing, and then step by step, right? So it's going to uppercase everything, and it gives me examples of what it's doing. So that's how I understand, as that junior developer or a new individual on the team, what it is that this is doing bit by bit. So here we can see the longer regex that was happening. We can see what that's doing and what that looks like. And as we scroll all the way down, it gives you overall purpose and complete sort of input-output examples. All right. So again, you know, another 10 plus 20 plus minutes saved in understanding how that works. So now I'm going to close my mapper. We will save. I'm going to close my notes. And I'm going to go back to SnapGPT Home just so everybody can follow the skills. And we're going to talk about taking this pipeline production ready. So we got rid of our to-do item. We understand that second expression, and we could iterate through. So in financial services, though, you can't just deploy something that works, right? It needs to meet operational standards like error handling, documentation, naming conventions of steps, right? Right now I have duplicate mappers. So what I'm going to do is use our pipeline analysis skill here. And you can see when I click that button, it pre-prompts for analyze the pipeline. I'm going to go ahead and send, so that goes off. Now, traditionally, this would be manual code review, right? I would submit, I'd get feedback, we go back and forth. Now, before I even submit, right, before we go through that struggle, we can save everybody time, and I can analyze it with a built-in linter. All right, so here's what it found. You'll see duplicate snap labels. We're going to take a look at that one with another skill here in a moment. Presence of disabled snaps, we'll leave that one alone for today. We'll take care of notes real quick, and then we'll take care of some of the other things like significantly changed names. I also want to point out that that's the pipeline insights. There's also a snap analysis tab. And so here you can see that it's pointing out that we have a file writer writing a file to JSON, to SLDB. That's local storage to us. That's not something we recommend for production, but is often used in development. It's usually more for configuration files and things reading in. So let's close that analysis and fix a few of these and then iteratively walk through this to see how it works. So if we delete those just as a starting point, we reconnect there. We come up and we say in our notes, for example, this is a FinServe pipeline cleaning merchant names and matching merchant aliases or something along those lines, right? So we save that and we're going to analyze again just so that we can show this iterative process, right? So we expect to see at least two of the things removed. So we no longer have the one about notes, and our snap analysis is now clean. So we can keep marching down this path and get this production ready. Right. And again, we're saving a lot of time in being able to do this. So last thing then, let me go back to SnapGPT Home. And we're going to use this new pipeline refinement skill. So I'm going to click on this. The pre-populated prompt is fine. It says, in case it's too small, it says refine this pipeline to assign descriptive and meaningful labels to snaps. And we're going to go ahead and send this out. Now it's going to analyze this. It is going to come up and it's going to show us something interesting, though, that Dominic had mentioned, which is that reg possibility, right? So here it says, if I have other pipelines that are similar to this and I want to leverage them for naming convention, I could select them here. For today, I'm just going to hit continue without pipeline examples. All right. So SnapGPT is analyzing the pipeline now. It's looking at what each snap does and taking context of the rest of the pipeline, but it's going to help me relabel. So I won't have mapper, join, mapper. It's going to give me more descriptive information here. All right. So the first thing it's going to do is actually give me a readout of what it's going to suggest. And then in just a second here, it's actually going to prompt me to either load in a new tab or even replace. For the sake of this demo and simplicity, I'm just going to hit replace current pipeline so you can see, right? And now each of these has a more unique name. So for example, clean and normalize transaction data, right? Down here is parse merchant aliases. Here's match merchant hints to canonical names. So you can see it gave them much more enriched names. And I didn't have to go through each snap to do that. I didn't have to read or understand any of it to make that work. So this is going to help with that sort of auditing process and troubleshooting downstream. All right. Let me go back to SnapGPT Home one more time. And again, I didn't have to do this. I could type it out, but I just want to do it so that everybody understands which skill we're using from the list. So comprehensive documentation for compliance, audit trails, knowledge transfers. This is usually key in financial services and other highly regulated industries. So traditionally, this means somebody writing this out from scratch. Today, I'm just going to hit pipeline descriptions, and I'm going to hit that so they can go off and do it. It's going to analyze the pipeline. It's going to give us an overall summary. It's going to let us know what each snap does. And this can become either the documentation or the foundation of documentation if we have internal standards that require more depth. But if I scroll back up here, you'll be able to see that it takes and gives us a high-level explanation first, and then goes snap by snap explaining the rest of what's there. Okay. So what would have been, 30 to 60 minutes of work here, right? Dominic mentioned saving people about 3 hours, right? I think when you look at everything we've looked at today, that we're sort of in that ballpark. But this documentational piece alone could have been 30 to 60 minutes plus. And I know for me, a lot of that time is just that initial like writer's block, like where do I start? How do I get going if I don't have, especially if I don't have a good template. Okay, so to recap what we've seen, right? We've showed SnapLogic helping us write complex expressions in English. We've explained inherited code. We've caught production issues for review before we send it to review, really. We've cleaned up that pipeline using other skills, and then we've generated that documentation, right? So bottom line is that these aren't flashy features. They're the daily tasks that add up to hours of saved time and fewer errors in production. And in regulated industries like financial services, pharmaceuticals, right, that combination of speed and accuracy is critical. Back to you, Dominic.
Thank you, Roger. That's fantastic. So it's worth pointing out a couple of things that we saw. So the retrieval augmented generation, as Roger underlined, is one way in which you can use existing pipelines as a guide to SnapGPT, but there's also the built-in use of the pattern library. So if you weren't aware, SnapLogic comes with a pattern library. A public pattern library has a whole lot of templates for common tasks. So if you need to ingest data into Tableau from Workday, say, there is a best practice way of doing that that's available to you, and the SnapGPT will also use as part of its generations. But you can also build out your own pattern library with your house style, your best practices, any particular requirements that your use case imposes on you. And again, SnapGPT will take those into account as it works. So another way to guide it towards best outcomes. So I mentioned before, SnapLogic has been working on AI and generative AI for a while now, and we didn't stop with SnapGPT. So once we had the general idea of a co-pilot up and running, and we continued working on it as we've described, but we also started looking at other ways that people could use generative AI within SnapLogic. One way is to build their own Gen AI powered experiences using SnapLogic as the foundation. And so that's when we released the Gen AI app builder, which was then rebranded as the agent creator once they moved to agentic AI, really started to getting underway. And as part of working with AI agents, we also put in place capabilities to work on agents outside the SnapLogic platform. So let's talk about those in turn. So Agent Creator is a toolkit that lets you build agentic AI as a data pipeline in SnapLogic. So you can visually create and deploy agents using the exact same techniques as you use to build SnapLogic pipelines, because after all, the interaction with a large language model looks very much like a standard data integration task. You have to read some data in, do something with it, and then return a response. And that is the bread and butter of SnapLogic. But we also need to, as Roger was underlining, make those interactions safe and secure. And so part of that is the control over the data flow to the agents and the information they have access to. But another part is the observability of understanding what those agents are actually doing, because that is the big difference between an agentic workflow and a more traditional deterministic workflow, is that you give the agents a goal, and then they will figure out for themselves to call other agents, call tools to provide information and undertake parts of that overall task. And so it's important to be able to understand and explain what is going on there. And as we mentioned at the beginning, this is a very new and still very rapidly evolving market. So we want to future-proof your work as much as possible by supporting multiple different large language models and also multimodal tasks within those large language models. So Agent Creator lets you build out your own Gen AI powered experiences while taking care of a whole lot of the undifferentiated foundational work that you'd otherwise have to get involved with. But lots of people are building agents outside the SnapLogic platform as well, so it was important to us to integrate within that wider ecosystem. This is a question that's not unique to SnapLogic, of course, and so there is this protocol, the Model Context Protocol, now an open source standard that lets agents call tools, resources, and prompts that are exposed by MCP servers. So SnapLogic pipelines already today can act as MCP clients and access all of that information and that functionality exposed by third-party MCP servers running elsewhere outside the SnapLogic platform. There are over 16,000 just on one particular MCP marketplace that I found. So that's an enormous richness that you can access directly from your SnapLogic pipeline. But what I think will be even more powerful is the use of SnapLogic as an MCP server to extend the reach of agents that you might have built or that your colleagues might have built in any number of third-party tools and environments, providing direct access to the core systems that SnapLogic is already connected to through its snaps and through all of the existing development work that you and your colleagues as SnapLogic developers have done over the years. So this is a capability that, as we speak right now, is still in beta, but it's already in active use by a number of SnapLogic customers and will be generally available very soon now. And it lets you set up a SnapLogic pipeline as an MCP server, exposing tools that connect directly to any number of backend systems. And I put a few examples on screen to give you an idea of the sort of thing that we have in mind and that our users are, again, already doing today with the beta capability. And the final example of further AI-powered capabilities that I want to cite today is what we call SLIM, the SnapLogic Intelligent Modernizer. So the idea here is that data integration is not exactly a new requirement for enterprises. People have been integrating systems and sharing data between them for decades now. And some of those decades-old tools are no longer really fit for practice. They're starting to reach the end of their useful life. They don't support modern deployment models in the cloud. They definitely don't support modern use cases such as AI. And so it's time to migrate off those tools, but there's a lot of work that's been put into them over the years and decades, and it's not easy to migrate all of that to a new, more modern, more future-proof platform such as SnapLogic. So that's why we decided to use Gen AI to help those users get off of those dead-end platforms. So the first step is to analyze what the integrations that have been built are even doing. If you have something that's 10 plus years old, the people who built it may not even be employed at the company anymore. It's very hard to figure out what it's even doing. So just being able to document that, as we saw with SnapGPT documenting pipelines, imagine that same task, but magnified and multiplied several fold, to be able to provide that documentation of what is even going on with those existing integration pipelines. Once you have that understanding, you don't want to replicate exactly what was done bit for bit into a SnapLogic pipeline, because the result would be a terrible, very bad SnapLogic pipeline. It's a different environment, it's a different world. What you want to do is break down the steps of the functionality of the existing integrations into little components that you can more easily replicate the functionality of in a more modern way. And so you cluster out those fragments of functionality so that you can properly replicate the goal, the business goal that you inferred by analyzing the existing integrations, but not the way that the original legacy platform went around it. And that's when you can use SnapGPT to generate a new SnapLogic pipeline that does the same thing, but in a way that is more suited to today's environment and its requirements and the capabilities that we have available to us. But the final step, as Roger also noted once again, you can't just take that generated pipeline and release it into production. You need to be able to test it and prove that it does indeed satisfy the criteria that apply to it. And a big part of that is getting access to the systems that you can even test against. And so we set up a system that will build out a whole sandbox, including stub endpoints for the various systems that the pipeline needs to talk to, so that you can test as much as possible of your logic in that isolated environment without having to waste time sitting around waiting for the testing window to open on the actual target systems, and make the best use possible of that limited testing time so you can go into production quickly with what you built. So I hope that you've seen a few interesting examples that you will want to follow up on. If you would like to see some further and perhaps more detailed explorations of common SnapGPT use cases, the QR code on screen will take you to a YouTube playlist with a variety of different examples. That link is also in the Docs tab, as mentioned earlier. And if you have further questions or comments, please do join us on the recently relaunched Integration Nation community at community.snaplogic.com. Roger and I are there, as are a number of our colleagues and any number of SnapLogic users from around the world. So please do share any questions or comments that you have. We read them all, and we would love to help you respond and get more experience with SnapGPT. But with that, thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. Thank you, Roger, for helping me with the demo, and we hope to see you again soon.